They mocked the girl for saying her granddad was a SEAL legend, then froze when the unit walked in. They laughed when she said her granddad was a Navy SEAL legend. Laughed even harder when he walked into the classroom wearing an old flannel and leaning on a shaky cane. But minutes later, when the floor vibrated and shadows filled the doorway, those same voices fell silent, and the truth finally walked in. The laughter hit Emily harder than she expected. It wasn't loud at first, just a ripple of whispers, a few smirks, the kind that sting more than open mockery. She stood at the front of her 8th grade classroom, clutching the edges of her presentation board like it was the only steady thing left in the room. Her fingers were trembling, but she kept her chin up. She had practiced this speech for 3 nights straight. She believed in it. She believed in him. Her grandpa, Henry Cole, sat behind her in a too-small plastic chair, his weathered hands resting on top of his cane. His flannel shirt was faded, the elbows threadbare. His boots were scuffed, like they'd carried him through decades of storms. He looked harmless, almost fragile, nothing like the warrior Emily had grown up hearing about. Mr. Daniels, her history teacher, paced slowly, arms crossed, eyes heavy with doubt. "Emily," he said, rubbing his temples, "is this another exaggeration, a little creative storytelling?" A few kids snorted. Someone whispered, "SEALs don't look like grandpas." Emily swallowed hard. "He's telling the truth," she said softly. "He was one of them." But her voice wavered, and that was all they needed. Grandpa Henry didn't flinch, not when the whispers grew louder, not when the back row boys mimicked swimming like seals. Not even when Mr. Daniels sighed the kind of sigh adults use when they think a child is confused. Instead, Henry's eyes drifted to the classroom window, the sunlight catching the edge of something deep, something old, a memory maybe, a battlefield no one else could see. Emily felt her cheeks burn. She wanted to defend him the way he had defended her since she was little, but every word felt like it would crack in her throat. Mr. Daniels stepped closer, lowering his voice but not his ego. "Emily, Navy SEALs are elite. They're selected, trained, hardened. They don't just show up for school presentations wearing flannel and limping." He gestured to Henry's cane. "This is why we stick to real, verifiable history." Emily felt her heart thud painfully. Henry shifted and his chair squeaked. The room went quieter. He leaned forward slightly, his voice gravelly but warm. "Let her finish, son." The room stilled. Emily had never heard him use that tone, not sharp, not angry, just steady, like a wave that knew exactly where it needed to go. The tension thickened, pulling every gaze toward the old man. But Mr. Daniels forced a tight smile, the kind people wear when they think they're being reasonable while stepping on someone's dignity. "Sir," he said, "with all respect, I have a responsibility to make sure students learn factual history. False military claims." He didn't finish, because Henry lifted one finger, just one. Slow, deliberate, almost ceremonial. Emily had seen this gesture before. At home, it meant asterisk enough. But in that classroom, it meant something else, something that made even the air pause. Henry took a breath, steady and deep, as if inhaling some invisible strength that had lived inside him for decades. "Young man," he said quietly, "truth doesn't wear a uniform. Sometimes it wears flannel." Some students chuckled, unsure whether to laugh or listen. Emily reached into her backpack with shaking hands and pulled out an old, creased photo. "This was him," she whispered. "Before the injury, before Mom was born." Mr. Daniels took it, barely glancing. "Photos can be edited, Emily. We talked about this." The photo fluttered onto his desk. Something inside Emily cracked. Something inside Henry awakened. In the back of the classroom, a parent named Mark Wright, quiet, unnoticed, shifted in his chair. He had come early to pick up his daughter. He hadn't planned to stay. But something about the tension, about the way the old man carried himself, made Mark lean in. He had served 12 years in the army. He'd met many types of men, loud warriors, silent ones, broken ones, and then the rare few whose presence said more than their words ever could. Henry felt like the latter. As the kids giggled again, Mark's gaze drifted to Henry's boots, then to his hands, then to the tiny, worn patch barely visible beneath the cuff of his sleeve. His breath caught, a faded frogman insignia, hand-stitched, old generation, nearly extinct. Only a handful of men were issued it. Mark sat up straighter, his heart thudded. Meanwhile, Mr. Daniels finally snapped. "Enough, sir, I'm going to have to ask you to wait outside. This is not appropriate for the classroom." Emily jolted. No, he didn't lie. Henry touched her shoulder, gentle, grounding. It's all right, sweetheart, he murmured. Mark saw something Henry wasn't showing, something coiled, something controlled, something incredibly, dangerously real. Henry stood slowly, using the desk for balance as his knees groaned beneath him. His flannel bunched, his cane tapped lightly against the tile. The classroom went silent, not out of respect, but because everyone was waiting for the old man to shuffle out in embarrassment. Emily felt tears welling. "Please don't go," she whispered, gripping his sleeve. He gave her a soft smile, one that carried 60 years of storms and victories. "I'm okay, Em." But before he could take another step, a low rumble drifted through the floor. At first it sounded like distant thunder, then like a rolling heartbeat through concrete. Then like rotors, heavy, synchronized, unmistakable. Every student glanced at the windows. Even Mr. Daniels paused. Mark stiffened. He knew that sound. The classroom door swung open just as the rumble hit its peak. And in walked *3 men *, broad-shouldered, stone-faced, wearing tan uniforms with an unmistakable insignia on the chest. Not actors, not reenactors, not imposters. SEALs, active, silent, deadly calm. The tallest one scanned the room, then locked eyes on Henry. "Captain Cole," he said, voice steady. "Sir, we came as soon as we heard." The room froze. Not a whisper, not a shuffle. Even the fluorescent light seemed to hum quieter. Emily stared at the 3 men, her heart thudding in her throat. "Captain, her grandpa." Henry blinked, surprised but not shaken. The tallest SEAL, Commander Rourke, stepped forward and removed his cap, holding it against his chest with a respect so deep it made the air feel sacred. "Sir," he said, "we were in training 2 blocks away. We received a call from one of our own." He nodded toward Mark in the back of the room. "He said someone was questioning your service." A ripple went through the classroom like a shiver. Mr. Daniels swallowed hard. I think there's been some misunderstanding." But Rourke wasn't looking at him. His attention was on Henry's cane, on the scar running across his knuckles, on the quiet dignity in the old man's posture. The second SEAL, a younger man with sandy hair, took a step forward. "Sir, the guys back at base still tell your stories, the way you trained, the way you led. They say you're the reason half of them made it through Hell Week." Emily's breath caught. Mr. Daniels' face drained of color. Henry shifted uncomfortably, almost embarrassed by the attention. "Boys," he muttered, "I hung up my uniform a long time ago." Rourke shook his head. "With respect, sir, legends don't retire. They just change the way they serve." The third SEAL, older, with steel-gray temples, stepped forward and knelt beside Henry's chair. Students gasped. A Navy SEAL kneeling in a middle school classroom was something no one had seen before. "Captain Cole," he said quietly, "I'm Master Chief Hill. You saved my father in '91, pulled him out under fire. Without you, I wouldn't be here. So if anyone is questioning your honor..." He turned his head slowly toward Mr. Daniels. "I'd like to hear them say it again." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating, unbroken. Mr. Daniels' mouth opened, then shut, then opened again without sound. His confidence evaporated, replaced with something unfamiliar in him, fear, maybe, or shame. Emily looked up at her grandfather. His eyes glistened, not with pride, but with something gentler. A quiet ache, a lifetime held inside a man who never asked to be seen. He squeezed her hand. "Didn't want all this fuss," he murmured, but the universe had decided otherwise. Commander Rourke turned to the classroom, his voice firm but unexpectedly warm. "Kids, I want to teach you something today. Something more important than any chapter in your history book." He paused, letting the silence shape the weight of his words. "When you look at a hero, you won't always see medals, or muscles, or perfect posture. Sometimes you'll just see a tired old man, a worn flannel shirt, a cane." Emily watched her classmates' faces soften, their smirks dissolving into something like awe or maybe guilt. Rourke continued, "Heroes don't brag. They don't tell stories to impress anyone. That's why stolen valor exists, because the real ones stay quiet." He nodded at Henry. "Especially this one." Mark stood slowly from the back. His voice cracked. "Captain Cole trained my old platoon leader. The guy said your eyes alone could straighten a recruit's spine." A few kids giggled nervously, this time out of disbelief, not mockery. Henry rubbed his forehead. "Boys," he sighed, "you're embarrassing me." But Emily saw it, the tiny smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. The one she'd only seen when he talked about her late grandma. Her classmates watched him with new eyes. Human eyes, awakened eyes. Mr. Daniels cleared his throat, voice trembling. Captain Cole, I apologize if my comments came off as... Brooke turned sharply. Came off as what? Mr. Daniels, face flushed. I simply meant, this is a school, and I have to be cautious about unverifiable claims. Children sometimes imagine things. Emily stared at him, heartbreak and anger tangling in her chest. I wasn't imagining anything, she whispered. Brooke stepped closer to the teacher. Not threatening, just present in a way that made excuses feel small. Sir, this man served in the teams before most Americans even knew they existed. His missions were classified before you were born. The only reason you haven't heard of him is because he did the job right. Master Chief Hill added quietly, some men save lives without ever touching a spotlight. Mr. Daniels looked at Henry, really looked, and something shifted in him. His posture shrank, his eyes softened. He exhaled, shaky. Emily, I owe you an apology, he said, and you, Captain Cole, I misjudged you deeply. Henry gave a small nod. Happens. People see what they think they see. Emily felt her chest tighten, not with pain, but with something rising, something like justice. Outside, the rumble of rotors faded, replaced by normal classroom sounds, the hum of lights, the shuffle of feet, the steady rhythm of breathing. But the energy in the room had changed forever. Rourke reached into his pocket and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He unfolded it slowly, revealing an old challenge coin, tarnished, heavy with history. This belongs to you, he said, placing it in Emily's hands. Your grandfather earned it before any of us were born. Her eyes widened. The coin's surface was scratched, the emblem worn, the weight surprising. She looked at Henry, who just shook his head. Keep it, he said. It's yours now. Emily swallowed the knot in her throat. Pop, why didn't you ever tell me everything? He smiled softly. Because I wanted you to know me as your grandpa, not as a war story. Rourke straightened. Captain, your ride is waiting outside. The Co wants to greet you personally. A murmur moved through the classroom, half awe, half disbelief. Henry sighed, amused. Can't even visit my granddaughter without causing a scene. Emily laughed through her tears, but she knew every kid in that room would remember this day forever. The night felt heavier than usual. The wind was quiet, the streets empty, and every shadow looked like it was hiding a truth no one wanted to see. Emma sat alone in her room, her hands shaking as she held the small notebook she had taken from Mr. Brooks's desk. Pages of numbers, dates, transfers, names she recognized, names she didn't. It didn't take long for her to understand this wasn't just a teacher behaving strangely. This was corruption. This was a network. This was a betrayal of the entire town. Her heart pounded as she flipped through the pages. Every discovery made her stomach twist. Every connection made her breath shorter. But then she reached the final page, a page that froze her blood. Because writ at the very bottom was asterisk her own father's name. Emma dropped the notebook as if it were burning her hands. She shook her head, whispering, "No, no, that can't be right." But the ink didn't lie. The numbers didn't lie. The truth didn't lie. Tears blurred her vision. The quiet girl who had spent her whole life staying unseen was now holding a truth powerful enough to shatter everything she loved. Emma walked out of the house with the notebook pressed to her chest. The streetlights flickered as she passed. Her breath came out in shivers. She arrived at the empty schoolyard, the same place where all of this began, and stopped beneath the old oak tree. The moonlight cast long shadows around her, and for a moment she felt like she was being swallowed by the darkness. Then she heard footsteps, slow, heavy, familiar. Her father stepped into the light, still wearing his police badge, still looking like the strongest person in her world. Only now Emma knew he was hiding something. "Emma," he said softly, "I need you to give me the notebook." "Dad," her voice cracked. "Tell me it's not true." His jaw tightened. A storm gathered in his eyes. He didn't deny it. He didn't explain. He just reached out his hand. "Please, you don't understand how dangerous this is." And in that single moment, Emma realized something. Her father wasn't trying to protect himself. He was trying to protect asterisk her asterisk. "Someone is watching us," he whispered. "They already know you've seen the notebook." Emma's breath froze. Because the quiet night suddenly didn't feel quiet anymore. Before Emma could speak, a shadow emerged behind her father. Mr. Brooks, the man who had started it all, the man who pretended to be harmless. He stepped forward, slow and casual, as if strolling through a garden. "Emma," he said with a cold smile, You've caused me more trouble than I expected." Her father moved in front of her instantly, one hand behind him to push her back. "Stay away from her." "But Mr. Brooks only laughed, not loudly but softly, like someone who believed they'd already won. "Officer Hale, you've served us well, but loyalty has limits." Emma felt the weight of danger crushing her. The notebook, the truth, her father, everything was spiraling at once. Then Mr. Brooks said something that shattered Emma's world even more. "Your father didn't want to join us. We forced him. He was protecting you every step of the way." Emma's knees weakened. Her father clenched his fists, and for the first time she saw fear in his eyes, not for himself, but for her. Because Mr. Brooks wasn't here to talk, he was here to end the story. Mr. Brooks took another step. Emma's father pushed her back again, whispering, "Run when I tell you." But Emma didn't move, not this time, not anymore. She stepped forward and spoke, her voice trembling but firm. "You think I'm scared of you, but you're the one who's afraid." But Mr. Brooks raised an eyebrow. "Of what, dear?" "Of the truth," Emma said, "and of the people who won't stay silent anymore." Her father turned to her, shocked. This was not the quiet girl he raised. This was someone stronger. Mr. Brooks lunged forward. Her father blocked him. A struggle broke out under the faint glow of the moon. Emma grabbed the notebook, ripped out the final pages, and shouted, "If anything happens to us, this goes to the press. All of it, every name." For the first time, she saw Mr. Brooks lose control. His calm expression cracked, his confidence slipped, because the truth was no longer a secret. It was a weapon, and Emma finally knew how to use it. Police sirens echoed in the distance, not the corrupt officers, but the ones her father secretly contacted in his final attempt to protect her. Mr. Brooks was arrested on the spot. The network fell apart within days. The truth spread faster than the lies ever did. Emma and her father stood on the school steps as the sun rose. Neither spoke at first. The world felt different.